All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I'm your host, Damon Pistulka, and I am excited for our guest today. I've got Joe Sullivan with Gorilla 76. Hey, Joe, welcome.
Damon, thanks for having me.
This is going to be fun today, Joe, because I think it's goes without saying when people know you, seen you around, what you're doing in manufacturing and the marketing there. It's an interesting space. I think it's a space that so many people are really trying to figure out their way, and I think it's going to be fun for us to talk about it today. So let's start about talking about with you. Excuse me, I can't talk. I'm so excited. I'm just stumbling over words. I can't talk. Let's talk about your background. Let's kind of talk about that a little bit and how you really kind of got where you're at today.
Yeah, sure. So, my background. Well, I mean, first of all, I'm an agency, a marketing agency owner. My company, Gorilla 76. We've been in business for about 15, coming up on 16 years this summer. And my business partner John and I founded the agency. It was, I graduated college in 05, undergrad. Started the agency in 06 as kind of a nights and weekends gig. Took a couple of years before we were able to quit our jobs and take this thing full time after we were working in marketing agencies simultaneously to kind of starting this thing up. But my background has really been in I was an art kid growing up. I went to school for graphic design and kind of figured out that I wanted to be able to apply that in a setting where I could actually make a career and went into marketing as a result. So really that's kind of my background. The first agency I worked in was more focused on consumer products. Like I worked on Miller Beer. I worked on a pharmacy brand. I was kind of bored, frankly. And we, in our work early on, some of our first clients with Gorilla were construction companies. And we thought of our audience as like blue collar brands early on, people who made stuff with their hands. And that was kind of our foray into manufacturing, which is really kind of where we found our home. And probably 10, 11 years ago, where we kind of looked around our client base and said, our best customers are mid-sized B2B manufacturers, and we're just going to go own this. And everything's kind of snowballed since then.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's probably a lot different when you think back and look at how you would approach a Miller Beer type advertising effort compared to what you're doing with manufacturers today.
Oh yeah, I mean night and day. It's they can't even kind of put them on the same page, honestly.
Yeah, that's for sure. So when you're looking at the manufacturing sector where you're working in the B2B mid-sized manufacturers, what really do you think is the biggest challenge that you see with their marketing today?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is this common thread I see across a lot of manufacturing organizations, and it's that they're not marketing-driven organizations. They're sales-driven organizations. And to them, marketing means we go to trade shows, maybe we run some print ads, maybe do a little pay-per-click. We've got somebody who makes the website look nice and updates SKUs in our product catalog, and it's a big expense on the P&L ultimately. And so I think that probably the biggest hurdle for us, and we were honestly warned against working with manufacturers along the way by some agency advisors. They said, I've seen companies go down this route, and there's a lot of opportunity there, but manufacturers tend to be, this is not meant to be an insult, but they're unsophisticated as marketers, like because they're sales-driven organizations, and they're what they think of as marketing is just different. And so there's an education curve there. Honestly, it was a lot harder 5 to 10 years ago than it is now. I've seen a lot of companies coming around, and you're seeing people realize like we need to be visible online. We need to be, expert. We need to be portrayed as experts in our space. We can't just rely on referrals and repeat business to grow. And so I'm seeing a lot more companies start to take it seriously, but it's still an uphill battle, and it's hard to get manufacturers to think of marketing as a revenue engine for the company as opposed to just a sort of a necessary evil.
Yeah. And that's a great point though, because manufacturers for decades before us and many decades before us, were boots on the ground sales organizations. That's why they did it. And and we really, if you think about it, the millennials coming into the workforce as leaders in these organizations now, decision makers and things like that, we really haven't had that kind of a buyer process shift compared to previous generations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is one of the things where the marketing comes into play a lot more prevalently now than it did before.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think part of it is you have a more tech savvy generation who's come up with, Google and Facebook and Instagram and social media, and so it's just a more tech savvy group of people entering the workforce. And I think and then you pair that with just the accessibility of technology and the way publishing information online.
Data.
Yeah. And
finding data. It's just, if you grow up in Google, they can, if you grew up with it from the time you're in grade school or middle school, being able to find the data you want, that carries on into your professional career and your decision-making process to buy even very expensive items. And I think that shift is much different than it's ever has been, because look at the generation, my generation before me, generation before that. Yeah, there were changes, and it went from maybe print to more, there was radio and television, other things like that, but it never has been as much as it is and continues to develop into, the buyer, can find the information I want without talking to a salesperson.
That's exactly right. It is a complete power shift in terms of, the buyer is now kind of in charge. Like they don't need that conversation to start the process. And I'm not, and believe me, I am all about in-person conversation and human interaction playing a role. But the reality is, in a majority of buying situations now, that process is starting before it's out of your hands. The beginning of that process is out of your hands. And that's the place where marketing needs to play the biggest role, is when you think about, especially when you have, if you're a company that's selling CapEx equipment, or even any kind of product that has some complexities to it. It's not just a commodity. People are out there looking for information. They're comparing options. They're trying to understand ROI. They're trying to understand total cost of ownership. And if you're not visible, they're looking at somebody else. That's just the reality. So if you want to have that sales conversation, it needs to start with marketing in a digital setting, and you need to earn the right to that sales conversation.
Yes. I think you said it well there too. You need to earn that right to that conversation, because that buyer is in control from finding that data, moving down that buying process much farther before any conversation will be had with any supplier.
Sure.
And if you're not part of that conversation in the beginning, you're not there at the end.
That's right.
Yeah. So have you seen in the recent years, have you seen some companies kind of come out of the woodwork that were doing good marketing, quite honestly, pass some other people up?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's absolutely happening. I mean, it's, without promoting my business, it's, that's kind of what we're helping our clients do. But, it's the companies who are, they're recognizing what we just talked about, which is that there's this shift, right? And so it's okay. Well, who are those people who we're trying to reach? For a lot of companies we consult, they're trying to reach some kind of engineer or technical professional who is experiencing some problem, or maybe it's a plant manager or a maintenance person, like somebody who has an issue on the job floor, or in their role that they're trying to solve, or there's some objective they're trying to achieve. And so, the way you win is you dial in on who are those buying process influencers, what matters to them that overlaps with your expertise. And then you figure out how can we be the educator here? How can we create assets and messaging that will actually be helpful and relevant to them, and get it in front of them where they already consume information online, so we can earn attention and trust. And so it's the companies that are doing this that are winning, because in the meantime, everybody in a more of a traditional approach is out there, just knocking on doors. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing that, but they're kind of approaching their whole audience as if they're in buying mode, and they're treating everybody the same. They're blasting sales messaging out there, and it's not helpful, right?
Yes. This is awesome. And I just want to say hello to Gail. Thanks for stopping by today. Gail Robertson. She works with injection molding companies and helps them. And she's up in Windsor, Canada, but that's an industry where I came out of, quite honestly. And that's one of those that it's as you're talking, it's a little different than and we'll talk about this a little later, like a big dollar product. It's more like a big dollar customer. When you look at those kind of, it's a different deal, but you're exactly right. And I think about the manufacturers that don't understand how marketing is kind of like a tool in the toolbox to help you at various stages throughout the sales process. Like you said at the beginning, it could be just awareness. It could be, oh, this is our company, these are the kind of things we do, or it moves down the line a little. It could be more specific problems that you're educating someone on, and then how your products or services, solve those problems. But I also think too, the traditional, I'm on the road, I'm selling, they don't consider how this all works together, because man, what I found with content and marketing materials that is so nice as a salesperson, second in part of my normal day, is that I have all this. When people have questions, it's not like I have to, well, this is what you go, well, look at this video of me talking to somebody, or this video I know that we did with this subject matter expert, and they were explaining this and blah, 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 blah. This content just gives you this arsenal of information where you can solve problems. And then even if you don't have the right solution, you might be able to get them to somebody else that does, if you're not the right source, because of the marketing work you do. It's just, the traditional salespeople, I think, that have embraced marketing are stronger salespeople for it.
Oh, I 100% agree. I love a lot of what you're talking about there. And you think of like, you get out of a sales conversation, and if you can say, think of that as your follow-up strategy. Like, had a great call yesterday or earlier today. I was thinking about something we talked about. Here's an article that one of our engineers published that goes deep on that topic. And or this video, even better, this video. And now what it's doing is, one, it's showing them you're thinking of them, not just trying to sell them something. You're creating some value for them by sending that along. You're putting a spotlight on somebody in your organization who is a deep expert, as opposed to you, who's just in maybe a sales role.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, it gives you a reason to be able to follow up with something more, a week later. Hey, just checking in on that proposal we sent, or whatever. Like, how many of those emails have you sent in your career, right? I've sent a lot of them.
Oh, yeah.
You can pair that with, curious if you guys have thought any more about this. By the way, thinking back to our conversation, we have a couple case studies that are pretty similar to the scenario you described here. I just wanted to drop links to those in. And now it becomes a nurturing process, not just kind of this hard sell and being that annoying, checking in all the time. Right?
Yeah, you're ready to buy now. You're ready to buy now. Instead of ready to buy now question, you're going, hey, here's some more information that might help you, no matter who you decide to do, or how you decide to solve your problem. I just think that seeing it change in the way that you can use it now is so exciting, because it just gives you these extra differentiators and sets you up as a salesperson. Whereas years ago, you had to be more of a knowledge expert if you didn't have marketing materials, or, a flyer really didn't do you any good. But now, with all the resources you have available, like you said, your engineers could be doing videos. You could have other technical videos or solution type video or blogs or whatever that does it. But you can be the source of information.
That's right. I like to think of yourself as a media company. You should be a resource producing the best content possible for your niche audience. Who are the people you're trying to reach, and how can you be the most helpful resource out there for them? Like,
that's awesome. You're a media company, and you're the best resource for your niche audience. That's awesome.
mean, that's
Because
exactly what we try to be in the industrial marketing space. Like, you go to our learning center and it is just filled with video content and written content, long and short form. We have, 90
nice.
some podcast episodes, but it is just, there is no sales material in there. It is purely educational. Some of it's tactical for marketing people. Some of it's more for CEOs and people who are thinking more about like overarching strategy. But you got to do the same thing for yourself, for your audience. Be their best resource.
Yeah, that's audio. That's great, because it's about teaching people, because then they can make an informed decision. Because I'm sure it's with me, I'd rather someone make an informed decision and pick me, or make an informed decision and go someplace else if I'm not the right fit, than pick me in error.
Exactly. I mean, you're right on with that. I mean, how many bad sales calls have you taken in your life where you've, the wrong person, it can be a qualifier for you too. It can raise the bar in terms of, the standard of work you do, or the level of customer we want to be working with. So I think there's something valid to that too.
Yeah. That's good. So the one of the things that I was wondering, as you're going along, you talked about it a couple of times. I'm looking over some notes here that I wrote before this. So what's one thing that's surprising you in manufacturing marketing right now that you're going, man, I would have never thought?
Yeah, interesting. That's a good question. I think I'm starting to see more in the podcasting world, which is interesting to me. When I launched our podcast a couple of years ago, I wasn't quite sure how people would respond to it. There weren't a lot of manufacturing podcasts out there, and certainly not many that had kind of a marketing tilt to them, but I've seen a lot more popping up. I see people, and I think honestly, some of this is product of the pandemic. It's some of these multimedia channels, or what you're doing here, Damon, with a video-based live streaming platform. Like, I've been a little surprised at how much traction some of these multimedia platforms have gained inside of manufacturing over the last few years. So that may be one thing.
Yeah, it is. And I see, like you said, there's a lot of podcasts that you see springing up. And I think there's some that come and go, and there's some that are actually pretty good that you're seeing around a lot more around it. So, got a couple other people stop by. Chris Young, I know it's him because thanks, Gail, for commenting and letting me know that. And Gail talked about educational info. She's big on that, does a great job with her work as well.
Yeah.
So as you're going along with this, and you're talking about your manufacturing with clients, one of the things you said it comes up in my mind a lot. How much of your time is teaching executives in manufacturing enough about marketing so they can make an informed decision?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, as I kind of mentioned, 5-10 years ago, I think there was a lot more of that happening, like talking about, being visible online and publishing your insights, and we'd get pushback on that. Like, well, we're not going to give away our secret sauce. Our competitors are going to see that, right? I remember writing a blog post a few years back, like called, "I'm afraid my competitors are going to see it." Right. And I mean, you kind of have a couple choices here. It's, you cannot publish anything because you're afraid your competitors are going to see it.
Yeah.
You're going to publish something, and the right people are going to see it, and so are your competitors. So which one would you rather have? So I think, I think that's one thing. I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. I forgot what you even asked me.
Well, about, how much time is really spent just educating executives so they can make a decision. Because I think sitting in the executive seat, like I done before, I put myself in that spot when I look at marketing, and I go, my biggest question would be, am I really spending the money the right way?
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think, I have a newsletter going out tomorrow morning that touches on this exact topic.
Nice.
I think a lot of manufacturing leaders who have not really done marketing seriously, which is probably most of them, they don't really know the difference between what marketing and sales should do. If their perception of marketing is, it's either like what I described earlier, it's trade shows, it's print ads, it's maybe some pay-per-click, it's making the website look nice, etc. or if they are in making an investment in marketing as a growth vehicle for the company, their expectation is that marketing's job is going to be generating opportunities that close as fast as, if you're doing kind of the same thing that sales is out there knocking on doors and cold calling people. And it's like, no, that's sales. Marketing's job is to, first of all, figure out who or what things the right people from the right companies that you want to reach care about. It's figuring out where can we target them? Where do they consume information where we can actually reach them and deliver messaging? It's testing that messaging to make sure it actually resonates before you build a whole marketing strategy around it. It's developing content for those people. It's figuring out how we're going to get that content in front of people, whether that means through SEO, through some kind of paid distribution. And it's building awareness. It's capturing demand. I'll get into this in a second maybe, but it's capturing demand where it already exists, people who are out there looking for a solution, but then it's creating demand among the rest of your audience so that you're building attention and you're earning trust. So when people enter a buy cycle, you're the first one they think of. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest mistakes I think a lot of companies make is they say, we're putting all our eggs in the basket of like pushing this bottom of funnel messaging at people as if they all have a need and they all need what we're selling right now. Yeah. But the reality is probably for most of you, 1 to 3% of your total addressable market is actually in buying mode today or even this week. I mean, think about that for a second. How many of the people you're trying to reach are probably actually in Google right now or calling on the referral network because they need to buy something right now? Small amount. And yet most companies, when they launch a marketing initiative, that's all they're focused on is we need to sell product now, push product, sell product. And in the meantime, 97 to 99% of your audience who fits your ideal customer profile, who is exactly who you need to reach and influence, you're ignoring just because they're not buying at this moment. So that's actually where a majority of your marketing effort needs to be focused, is reaching those people, understanding what they care about, crafting messaging that's going to resonate with them, surrounding it with amazing content and success stories and product information that they can access. Regardless of where they are in the buy cycle, we want to be putting content in front of them that's going to resonate with them. And so that's where you need to be. You need to be building awareness and trust. And like I said, like a minute ago, when they enter a buy cycle, whether that's tomorrow or in a week or a year, they already know your name. They have positive associations with it. When they go to Google and they see you alongside 9 other companies, you're the one they click on because they already know you, right? Or better yet, they pick up the phone and they call you first. And like that is marketing.
Yeah. That is an awesome way to explain it. I was sitting here just getting goosebumps because I was like, he is laying it down right here. And because it is.
I'm not really passionate about that at all.
No, yeah, I know. This is awesome. This is awesome because I love to hear that when you're talking, because the 97%, like you said, or 98 or 99% even, those are the people that you need to reach. And you need to reach them when they're not in buying mode, when they're just consuming content. They're reading, they're learning, there's those kind of things.
Yeah.
But, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, and you talked about the types of content too, it's so good in there. One of the things, though, I was going to ask you about, how much of your time in the marketing is spent creating what I would say, or Andrew Deutsch, a friend of mine, would say, voracious advocates for your brand once they bought from you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Honestly, probably not enough time, but I think it's probably an underutilized strategy. Everybody's focused on new customer acquisition, which of course is super important. But I think for a lot of companies, it's probably, frankly, a missed opportunity. I mean, a lot of our clients, they may work with, some enterprise organization, whether it's, automotive manufacturer or some big pharmaceutical company or whoever, and or oil and gas, and they may be working with one plant. Whatever in the Southeast US, and there's 10 other plants and they all operate kind of like separate companies, But when you're inside the organization, like you already have a shoe in the door there, and you can leverage that to probably show other, in maybe an account-based marketing way, show other, people with the same job roles that you're working with there, what is happening, what kind of impact you're having there, because you already have built-in credibility when you're working with somebody inside the company. So I think there's that. I think there's a missed nurturing play. Probably a lot of you listening have an email list of anywhere from 2 to 20,000 people. And probably the way a lot of you use it is when you're going to a trade show, you send out an email that says, we're going to be at booth, 67 next week. Make sure you stop by. And, but email is an underutilized platform for, what I'd describe as content distribution. If you're publishing amazing content in your blog, maybe for SEO purposes, you're using it in social channels, maybe you got a paid social media like distribution strategy for your content, but email is low-hanging fruit there. Like, you have a list of people who already know you, probably a large percentage of them like and trust you. And as opposed to using it as a vehicle to just, blast out messaging about, we're going to be at this trade show, or we have a new product released, or, about to be released. Can you use it as a distribution vehicle to get insights out for new content you've published or videos you've recorded? And the more segmented you can do it, the better. But it's been one of the best plays we've ever had for ourselves. We've been publishing a newsletter for probably 12 years now that it goes out every Wednesday at this point. One's going out tomorrow morning. I just hit schedule on it about an hour ago. And I can't tell you how many people over time have said, hey, we've been reading your content for the last year or the last 3 years. One of my best clients that we have more revenue attributed to them than anybody, but probably 3 companies we've ever worked with. Those were their words. We've been reading your content for 2 years. We're in the search for an agency. You're the only ones we're talking to right now. Perfect, right? Like, this is it's
Yep,
and you can
that's,
use it
that's why you do it.
Yeah, it's right. And your existing customers, like, rather than just thinking of it as a way to upsell, can you make it just purely helpful, or maybe 95% helpful, and at the bottom you talk about your product, new product release or whatever, but you're creating value every 2 weeks or at least every month, and it's just making you look smart. It's exposing them to other people on your team who are smart that they don't know yet. It's helping them solve problems they have. So, I think that's one really good way to use it.
Yeah, that's awesome, because it is, again, like you said, people will look at some of these newsletters and read them, maybe not read them all, of course, but they're going to read some of them over years before they make the decision to buy. Yeah. And then you've built that kind of friendship, relationship, whatever you want to call it, over time, and awareness and all that. And you're just the natural choice. It's not like, so this brings me to another question, but that natural choice brings it to, I want to ask you this. So have you been, some of the clients that you've worked with, have they, when you're marketing with them for a while, do they ever remark about the fact that they get people that call them up and act like they know them almost when they, because of the marketing? Cause it freaked me out the first time it happened. Cause I've not been in marketing for lots of years like you. Yeah. And with our own company, it's pretty freaky when people call you up and they act like you know you. Yeah.
Well, I've certainly get it for myself, and I see why you get it, because you put your face on camera and you get out there in the world in front of your audience and you talk and you create content that people want to consume. And I think that's kind of the difference. I think doing video is a great example of why that matters, is because you build people, they become attracted to, they gravitate to your personality and the human element of content creation. And I think that's hard to replicate with written content, with words. I think but when you see a face and you hear a voice and you start to trust that person and you feel like they're an expert, then that becomes a really powerful thing for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So now when you talk about you talked about video a little bit, and now do you think that the power of video is getting diluted because it's, 5 years ago, we didn't have the live streaming options that we do on LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter, I don't think, and a lot is YouTube. That was it. Do you
Yeah.
think, and then TikTok, of course. So do you think that the power of video is getting diluted some with the addition to the other channels, or do you think it's just getting it to people that are there anyway?
I think it's forcing people to make better content. And I think that all marketing channels go through this at some point, you know, like I think about, I've been in this marketing game for 15 years, and the thought of a manufacturing organization publishing a blog post 15 years ago was almost unheard of. Like a blog post, what's that? Like isn't that something that, like, you know, my cousin does to show pictures of her baby or something? You know, but you know, and here you are years later, and it's like, if you're not publishing expert insights in a learning center on your site, you're probably missing one of the biggest opportunities possible. And so what happens is, well, now more people start doing it, and there's more noise out there. And so the companies that are actually producing high quality stuff, like, you know, the bar just has to get raised. You can't just be doing it. You have to be doing it way better than everybody else out there who you're competing with, because there's only so much mind share you can capture. And yeah, so I think, yes, the answer to your question, sure, it's getting diluted, but I think it also is just forcing people to say, I can't just make video content. I have to make really good video content. So I love it when this sort of thing starts to happen, frankly, because it gives you the opportunity to just shine that much more. If what you have to say is really, you know, that much more valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. It just raises the bar. So you have to just get hired to stand out better.
And you have to be more creative too. Like, you know, I've been publishing podcast episodes for 2 years, and it's often in interview format. And like, I'm starting to think about, okay, I see a lot more side-by-side videos with a headline above them and captions underneath them in a square format on LinkedIn. I see about 20 times as many of those now than I did 2 years ago when I started my podcast. And so I'm starting to think about, like, okay, well, I probably need to start doing something a little bit different here, or it's just gonna be another person doing that same thing. So it forces you to be creative in addition to just upping the level of you know, quality for your content.
Yeah, that is. It's a big deal. And I think that if you're doing this and you're not looking at, okay, what are we doing next? You know, I'm going through a big upgrade again too. And it's just, you have to keep upgrading the way your show works, the podcast, whatever it is, the value of the content you're producing. It's got to get better
for sure.
Because they have less time. So the one thing that I was going to ask you, this may be off, I don't know, but in marketing now, how critical is a solid CRM behind your manufacturing marketing?
I think it's super critical, because if you want to do any level of full funnel reporting, from first marketing touch point all the way through to revenue, and you don't have the software tools to report on that, I mean, you can't do it. I mean, so I think, you know, I see a lot of, well, we're you know, we've got Salesforce, we've got a bunch of licenses, and this guy uses it a little bit, and most of our team doesn't, and you know, there's no marketing automation software in place that's connecting to it, or the CRM is not even synced up with the forms on the website, and yet I have conversations with leaders of these organizations about, like, all right, if we make a marketing investment, I need to understand what the ROI is. And those things need to be completely interconnected. You can't do full funnel reporting if you don't have a database that shows me, this is where this lead originated, this is the content that person consumed, these are the actions they took, this is what happens when they came back to the site, and eventually we quoted them at this much, and then business closed, and this was the dollar value of that. Like, when you have all of that information all across, you know, across your entire funnel, you can start to not only be able to report on it, but you can start to see trends. You can say, all right, you know, we may have generated 90% of our leads out of organic search or whatever channel. and if you don't have that connected to your CRM and you don't see the end, what that actually led to, then you're probably just going to keep doing more organic search. But the story that you really may, the real story there may be that the other 10% of your leads are coming through LinkedIn or whatever, some paid social channel. And those are the ones that are converting at 75% versus 2%. And you would never know that if you don't have, if you don't have the software in place that's going to help you be able to connect those dots. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it does. It does complete sense. And I'm glad you explained it the way you did, because I think that's one of the questions that leaders have is, so now we're going to do this marketing and they're going to talk about a CRM, and they probably already have one that they're not using, or they're using partially, like you said, and to really deploy it and understand and get your value from the work you're doing in marketing or sales. I think that CRM is one of the key or the foundational pieces that you really need to have in place, because sales isn't a one-dimensional thing anymore, where I'm going out and talking to an individual and doing it. And like you said, you have to know where your business is coming from, where your leads are coming from, and which ones are closing and what rates. And so you put your efforts in the right area.
Yeah. And it's not just a few things here. This is the CRM matters because your executives they want to understand that if we're making a marketing investment, we need to understand what kind of impact it's having. And if you don't have that in place, it's going to be very hard to make that determination. That's one thing. The second thing is that without that data, marketing is not going to be informed enough to know where to double down, what things to stop doing, how to shift around, energy. Like, we have standing calls with our clients, at least every other week, where we are in the CRM with them, and there's a two-way dialogue happening. So we can identify trends. We can say, okay, it looks like these leads have been generated through this channel. How do they look? They look great on paper. And the client says, no, these are horrible. And here's why. Our sales team gets on a call with them. We wind up quoting business, and it sucks all this time from us. And then they wind up, buying some low margin solution or whatever. But over here, these ones, this is perfect, and here's why. And we can say, okay, I see what's going on there now, and let's go double down on that and do more of that. So that's the second thing. The third thing is when your salesperson is not inputting all their information and managing the relationship inside of a CRM, what happens when that salesperson goes and takes another job and walks away with all of that information? And how are you supposed to get the person who's replacing that person up to speed? How are you supposed to pick up that customer relationship where it left off when none of those conversations are logged? There are no notes in there. Any documents associated with that relationship aren't logged there. So that's kind of another one that I think is really needs to be considered, is just the information loss if you are not, you don't have that central database.
That the last point was awesome. I'm going to back up to where you talked about lead quality. And I think that is so cool to be able to go, okay, if you got your CRM set up right and go, these are leads that came from pay-per-click and they were great, or they were not. And you can see what they ended up doing or how it ended up playing out those, because there are definitely quality differences in the way people are coming. Like, you can, some companies, if you do pay-per-click, you can get a lot of leads, but it's like you said, they're not that great of leads. They're looking for a low margin product. They're and just boom, they want to go in and out. And you look at some other ways that may take you a little more effort, maybe a little different, like some other kind of platform marketing or content creation that brings you a different lead, but that could be a really good lead. That's a good long-term high value customer. And that bit of data is huge, because like you said, if you're working with your clients, as you being an agency working with your clients, and you can see that, you shift your resources into the best, highest value customers. That's
right. That's absolutely right. Here's a quick example on our own website. There is a page on our website. It's if you Google search marketing for manufacturers or manufacturer marketing or whatever things related to that, we're going to rank in the top 3 or 4 spots for most places. You'll see Gorilla 76 there. It is like it's an article titled 8 key strategies for 2022 or something like that. I can't remember exactly how it's phrased. That page, I can attribute hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue to that page. 3 of my very best clients I have ever had, I know originated through an organic Google search through that page. Last year, I just conducted one of those searches. We kind of hadn't really been focused on search engine optimization last year. We'd been working on some other strategies, and like, whoa, we had fallen to page 3 or something in those. So I rewrote it. I took 10 hours, on like some Sunday morning / the next day on Monday, and I rewrote that as a 3,000 word article, purely educational in nature, and I built a few internal links to it. And the next week we're back to ranking like 4th, and all of our organic traffic is back up because I know how important that particular page is. And if I did not have HubSpot installed as my marketing automation and CRM, I would never have been able to trace, those clients back to that particular page where they originated on our site 3+ years ago. So it's a microcosm of the bigger picture here. But you need to understand what things are actually contributing, not to just lead generation, because frankly, a lot of lead generation that happens out there is a bunch of garbage. It's generating contacts that either waste your sales team's time or are never going to close. You need to understand what leads are you converting that you're actually quoting business for, that are buying from you. And then you need to identify what are the common threads that we can identify among those types of individuals, and how do we do more of the things that have produced those people and nurtured those people and led them through their buying process to actually becoming customers.
That's a great point. Leads are not just lead. Quantity is not
it's a marketing KPI. Impressions, traffic, leads. These are KPIs that should show you if you are going in the right direction or not. Marketing source pipeline should be your North Star metric. Is marketing producing business that you are quoting with the right people from the right companies? At some point, sales has to be responsible for closing the deal, but and that's why we kind of hang our hat on marketing source pipeline. Like, that should be your marketing North Star metric. Yeah,
that's a great one. Marketing source pipeline.
Yep.
Yeah, because if you can attribute it back to your marketing efforts and it turns into good quoting opportunities and then business, that's what you want.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. That was so good. I actually forgot my next question, but we'll get by that. So I'm going to go back to it because this is great. I'm glad we got to talk about this a little bit because you're helping the manufacturing leader here, the owner, the high-level executives in the business really understand this better, because again, to them, it's about, putting resources in the right place and then understanding, are we getting our value from that?
Yep.
And a lot of these places, quite honestly, even in the mid-sized manufacturers, don't have huge marketing teams, don't have a lot of things. Like you said, they have salespeople. They have sales managers. They have that. And a lot of time they're tasked with, looking at the marketing as well, or managing the marketing as well. And they don't know that much about it.
That's right.
So it's great to be able to educate them a bit here and talk about that. So one of the other things I was thinking about, and I see this a lot, is that some companies still rely on one-dimensional marketing. And I mean, they've got an email list, they've got a blog, they've got whatever it is. How important do you think the marketing in multiple forms of content, multiple ways to get it out to people? So, if I'm a blog, I'm doing blogs, I need to do videos, I need to hit by my email, I got to do social, text, whatever the right way is to get to those people. How important is it to really look at that multifaceted approach compared to, I've got a really good email list and I use that?
Sure. Yeah, that's a complex question, but I do have pretty strong opinions about it. I think that there are a lot of variables that play into that, and probably the two biggest ones are, what resources do you have at your disposal to execute, first of all, and how does your audience consume information, and understanding that. So, talking about the first one, I do think a lot of companies make mistakes by thinking, oh, geez, we need to be here and we need to be here and doing this thing and this thing and this thing. They don't have enough resources to do any of that well if they try to do it all. And so you wind up thinning yourself out. And so I'm probably in a lot of cases, I'm a bigger advocate of figuring out, how do who are the people we're trying to reach? Who are the people we need to reach and influence and earn the attention and trust of on the end of our audience, in the companies we're trying to get in front of. Where do they consume information? And then what is at least one thing we can do really well? And so, a few different pillar platforms that you could potentially use. You could do a webinar series. You could say, we are going to do amazing educational webinars, not the ones where we get there on there and show our products and try to sell stuff, but like teach about the stuff that matters to your audience. And we're going to do them once a month, or something like you're doing here, Damon, is another great example of that. It's more of a live, streaming session, a podcast, or something like that, where if you can do that really well, that becomes something you can then repurpose. You can take the video, it's a live event, and then you record it and you clip out the highlights and you use that stuff and you write blog posts around the highlights and publish them on your website. And you can use that content in LinkedIn, publish content there. You could put a paid budget behind it to distribute it in front of the exact people you want to reach with on LinkedIn or elsewhere. So like that could be one way to look at it, is let's pick a pillar where we feel like we've got the right people to do it. Not everybody's that's not gonna be right for every company to get on camera and like conduct live events. It can be a heavy lift. But another way you could do it is to say our content pillar is going to be written content from our thought leaders. Like we are gonna tap into the brains of these 3 engineers or technical professionals, because they are the deep SMEs. And either I don't know a lot of engineers that love to write blog content. So a lot of times it's whether you're using an agency or a consultant or a freelance writer, or somebody's got to be quarterbacking the strategy of it. But we always talk about like marketers need to be the facilitators of content generation. And so if you know who the SMEs are inside your company that can address the things that audience is trying to, that matters to that audience, the marketer can be the facilitator to help interview your SMEs, pull the insights out of their brain, write content. And so that could be, where you start. And then I think regardless of what you commit to in terms of your content pillar, there's always ways to create micro content from that, to break out pieces of it, use it in social channels, use it for paid distribution. So I just think like there's content creation and there's content distribution. And so you make assets for your audience, and then you have to distribute them. You have to figure out, now how are we going to get this stuff in front of people? Because I'm not an advocate of just sitting back and waiting for people to show up and consume the content. Like SEO matters, it's important, but it's a long-term strategy, and a lot of you aren't going to win in the short term on that, if at all. So you have to find a way to proactively get that stuff in front of the people that you're trying to reach. Email is a vehicle for that. Paid social is a vehicle for that. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it, but.
I'm glad I asked the question, because you said a couple things there, create that pillar kind of content, what's your deal? Do you like to write? Do you like to do videos? A combination is webinars, and then your distribution methods and breaking it down into little snippets, whatever you got to do. And then just concentrate on getting it out in front of the right people. So
there's a lot of efficiencies that you can sort of deploy there. If you've got a 3,000 word article you've written, that thing could, each chapter of that could, get used as LinkedIn posts. You can put paid budget behind it. You can just turn that. Like I take my best performing LinkedIn posts, the ones that, get 100 likes and 50 comments, and those just become my newsletters. I said, okay, people responded well to this versus this one that's kind of flopped. Like clearly this concept is resonating with my audience. So where could I repurpose that? And my newsletter that will go out tomorrow morning is pretty much a copy and paste from a LinkedIn post from a couple weeks ago that performed well. I made some modifications to it so it fits better in an email format. But I think that's probably a missed opportunity, is to think about how can we repurpose different types of content for different channels, and then the work's mostly done for you already.
Yeah. That's an awesome idea. I'm just sitting thinking about that. That's great. Great. Well, Joe, it's we could sit here and talk for hours because it's so much fun talking to you about this, and your passion shows through. And, so what you got coming up on the Manufacturing Executive podcast? People you're talking to, excited about? I know you're excited about everybody because it's just fun talking about it, but what's happening there?
Yeah. So the Manufacturing Executive we're coming up on episode 100 here in a couple months.
Nice.
Recorded number 95, and I'm always working ahead a little bit, but on the show we have. I bring on a combination of CEOs and presidents of manufacturing organizations, as well as people who would be helpful to them. I've had sales and marketing experts. I've had a lot of people in Industry 4.0 technology and robotics, and people who kind of lend their expertise inside of manufacturing. But I'm trying to think of who's slated here on the horizon. I've got Chris Granger coming up soon. If you know
Nice.
who Chris is, he's at Eco, a distribution company, electrical distribution company. I'm excited about his episode because Chris is an engineer. Like, he comes from an engineering background, and he has found his way into being the content marketer for his company. And he's produced 200 some podcast episodes, tons of video content. Like, he is doing exactly what we are advocating for. But I love that his perspective on it, because he's not just some marketing guy telling people like, you got to go do this stuff. He came from that engineering background, and he's kind of living that. So I'm excited about his episode coming up. We just published one a few weeks ago with Jack Nalig, who is the president of Phoenix Contact. Jack talked all about this move to an all-electric society on the horizon, sort of being driven by certain forces going on in our economy right now. That was just fascinating to me, and his expertise is amazing. So there's always my favorite thing about podcasting, honestly, has been the interviewing people who I would otherwise have never had the chance to talk to, who would never want to give me, some marketing guy, the time of day. And you wind up getting an hour with these really smart people. It's the best market research I've ever done. So it's been a lot of fun. But you can check out the manufacturingexecutive.com if you're interested.
Well, I'm sure we'll get some people to do that, because it is good. I enjoy the guests that you've got on there, and it's been a lot of fun listening to them. Yeah. And so if people want to reach out to you, LinkedIn's, I'm sure, a good place. Joe Sullivan, Gorilla 76, the Manufacturing Executive podcast. Just want to make sure it wasn't say manufacturer. I want to say Manufacturing Executive podcast. Yep. And any other parting thoughts, Joe?
No, I don't think so. I think we kind of covered a lot here. I think my mission, I think, is to help manufacturers change their perspective on what marketing should be, and shift from this, necessary evil, this expense on the P&L, to it should be a piece of your revenue engine. It should be the thing that precedes sales to create opportunities with the right people from the right company. And that mindset shift just really needs to start happening in more places. So
that's awesome, man. Well, I want to thank you for being here. It's just been a ball, Joe, and learning from you, man. I can tell you're passionate about it first, but then you get into the details, you really know what you're doing, and look at some of your case studies. Awesome results there. So thanks for being here today, man.
Thanks for having me, Damon. It was a pleasure, and happy to come back anytime.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to us today. If you want to get a hold of Joe, just reach out on LinkedIn. You can find him there, or at gorilla76.com, and go from there. And we'll be back again later this week. Thanks, everyone.